All right, what's up, guys? Welcome into our week 2 college football playoff ranking reaction show. I don't want to undersell or underwhelm anyone of what's going to happen here on this episode, but Connor, first off, welcome in. So appreciative and glad you're here. Not a super interesting week, I feel like, with the rankings, but we'll get into it nonetheless. First and foremost, how are you, man?
I'm good. Yeah, really good. Everything is if things are afloat in our household, that is all I can ask for, and they are
Yeah.
right now. So yeah, everything's okay. You know what I realized though with tonight's rankings, if I predict the top 10 exactly correct,
Yeah.
it's lacking drama. That's usually not a good sign.
Did you go top 10?
Yeah, but it was easy. It was easy this time because if
Yeah.
you looked at and didn't overthink this, which you could
Mhm.
have overthought at certain
Is that a
points.
shot at me?
No, I think there were a lot of people that thought there were going to be
Yeah.
some different rankings. That thought Georgia was going to move up from 2 to 1 because they beat
Right.
Mizzou and they had their best win to date. They thought, oh, maybe Washington going on the road beating USC, they would move up, and Florida State would move back after Florida State got off to another slow start. Or oh, maybe Bama could vault Texas. Our guys at SEC final were debating that one in the
Mhm.
wee hours in the morning, late Saturday night. But no, none of that happened. Instead, everything stayed kind of true to form. If you paid attention to last week, if you saw the Oklahoma loss, you're like, all right, just kind of slide everybody on up.
Yeah.
And that's the way they're going to stick to it.
I thought it was like I had a couple of takeaways. This is going to be a theme that the Michigan slander is going to continue out of me. Not Big Ten slander, but like Michigan specifically. I had a couple of cracks in some of the foundations of things that I believed, like last week, with like Oregon, for instance. Oregon is a team that I'm very high on. I think is a team that could challenge for a national championship, but like I didn't do my due diligence in looking at some of these records or their records. They've played one opponent with a winning record, so maybe
McElroy
that's
got
why.
that stat from me. I'm
Dude, they
90%
had
sure.
to.
I'm 90% sure because he's kind of stumbled over it a little
Yeah,
bit. I think they talked about it on McElroy and Kubelik. And look, Cole gives me stuff all the time, so I'm not gonna clap
yeah,
back. But he's right. That's I think an interesting discussion at this stage. And I realize everybody's like, hey, it's gonna sort itself out. I get
mhm,
all this stuff, but 6 through 8 with Oregon, Texas, and Bama is fascinating on a couple of levels.
yeah,
McElroy brought up the point in the broadcast about how Alabama gets this great win against LSU and it stands pat at 8.
right.
And that suggests that Alabama is about 95% in control of its own playoff destiny, whatever you want to call it. And there
Maybe.
is still that possibility that it could get left out. And meanwhile, a team like Oregon has been given the love as the best one-loss team, when Oregon, if you look at the metrics that I like to do every single week going into
Yep.
this thing, because it kind of gives me some clear perspective and it doesn't force me into reactionary places and allows me to look at the resume as a whole. Oregon still has just the one win against a Power 5 team with a winning record. And it was a loud
Crazy.
one. And it was College Game Day was there. So that counts for more. And that's
Right.
reactionary. And it was Utah. And it was a big statement victory. Utah doesn't lose like that. They hadn't lost like that at home in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so for them to have that win, and it's the close loss against Washington. But then you kind of look at the rest of the resume. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit Michigan-ish. The
Yeah.
rest of the resume is. So I think that's kind of where the discrepancy is, where you look at Bama and Texas, who have deeper resumes. Texas also has that really dominant win that's aged well against Kansas too. And you're kind of
Mhm.
scratching your head going like, oh, is Oregon maybe getting a little bit too much love at this stage of the game for a resume that's not particularly deep?
There's one thing that you didn't mention and all that I'm shocked you didn't mention because I think it's one of the most important parts. Oregon not only has one win against a Power 5 team with a winning record, dude, they did it against a third string quarterback. Like,
But he's a pig farmer.
right.
Oh, like, I don't know.
Yeah, you hit the fact of that in for sure on the broadcast. That would have been. I think we're all very lucky that Oregon wasn't playing the 3:30 CBS game this past Saturday because that would have been the highlight of the broadcast for sure if it was a pig farming quarterback. All right, so going like I don't want to go through the top 25 as much, even that's where they had like some. Like the only thing that stood out to me to the top 25 there, I thought you could make a case that OK State is too low, but they have a blowout loss at home against South Alabama, so it's like the resume still has to count, even though they did just beat. I will say this for the committee's favor. I like that we're not overreacting week to week and
Yeah.
being a prisoner of the moment. I think that is good. I also think that Joey Galloway made a funny point where he was like, yeah, good to see Tennessee move up 4 spots because they beat UConn at home. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, it was Tennessee's Super Bowl, according to Jim Moore Jr. So,
There you go.
naturally, of course, they're going to get the love. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
That's out of context. You kind of look at that and you're like, why did Tennessee move up 4 spots? SEC biased.
Yeah.
That crowd, who that crowd is, headed by a certain Danny Cannell. We'll also ignore the fact that the Pac-12 has the top 1-loss team and the top 2-loss team, and the Big Ten has the top 0-loss team. So that argument kind of falls flat a little bit for me. But yeah, seeing that was I think funny in itself, but that turns into an interesting matchup, Tennessee and Mizzou. Like I have, Georgia buddies who are wondering who should we be rooting for this weekend? Should we be rooting for Tennessee or should we be rooting for Mizzou? And it's like, well, you can kind of look at it from both perspectives. I'd say you'd probably be rooting for Tennessee at this point because you want that win on the road next week to look really good. But here's something I wanted to ask you about and see kind of where your head's at with all this. And I don't mean to have everything come back to Bama.
That's fine. I love that.
I know you do. And I was debating this with my guy Brad Crawford, Chris Hummer. I think who was it? Bud Elliott joined into the fray in this one.
Mm-hmm.
The world in which Bama gets left out of the college football playoff as a 12-1 SEC champ who beats Georgia is existent or non-existent?
I think it's existent, but it's because I'm so beaten down by my faith in this team that I don't know what's right and what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right. I will say this: going into this today, I fully Connor. When's the last time you've seen the winner of Bama LSU not move up at all in the standings after that team won?
Texas has them currently log jammed at that spot.
They should. Bama's exactly where they should be. They should not have moved up after beating LSU, no matter how big of a win that is, whatever. You can say whatever you want to about Oregon, say what you want to about Texas. I think that there's a path for Bama to get there. But before I saw your tweet about this, and I don't want to give it away, but before I saw your tweet, I was like fully on board with, okay, if Ohio State wins out, if Florida State wins out, if Washington wins out, those 3 teams, they're all undefeated. They're clearly getting in.
Yep.
Texas wins out and then Bama wins out. In my opinion, it seems like, and I'm trying to take this from the objective standpoint of if the roles were reversed, I would be making the case for, if I'm a Texas fan, Texas should be in over Bama because they beat Bama. That's where I think you have to operate out of with this. So if that's how it all plays out, Ohio State wins out, Florida State wins out, Washington wins out.
Yeah,
it won't. No, it won't. But that's the only thing. That's the only way I see them not getting in from beating Georgia. But if you're telling me this Alabama team closes the year with a top 10 win against Ole Miss, a win against Tennessee, a win against LSU, and then a win against Georgia, yeah, we better be getting to the playoff.
Think about that. Think about what it would mean to beat an undefeated Georgia team. Their winning streak at that point, Georgia would be at 29 consecutive wins in an SEC championship in a neutral site game in Georgia State, which take that for what it is.
Yeah.
But the selection committee a couple years ago, when that scenario played out, moved Alabama to number 1. Right. Now, obviously, each year has a different set of criteria. The selection committee values Georgia greatly. Yeah. Okay. There's a reason why Georgia is at number 2 and not Michigan and not Florida State. For everybody that's kind of wondering, why is Florida State not getting that love when Ohio State is, because of its resume? Yeah. And Florida State probably has a better resume than Georgia at this point. I think we would agree on that. They've been there. And this is a subjective ranking.
Mm-hmm.
They have been there. Florida State has not. And I think that's the point. I heard Russillo talk about this with Cannell, and I think that's the point that sucks if I'm Florida State. But it's also the point that could benefit Alabama in that spot if they beat Georgia in an SEC championship, and what that win would say, as opposed to Texas beating what would be a 2-loss team in a Big 12 championship, because that's nothing. That's all that's left at this point. That would be an unprecedented decision that the selection committee would have to look at and say, man, the overall resume, and I know I've argued for it. If you have the same amount of losses and it's the head-to-head and a double-digit one in their place, I totally get it. But beating Georgia is different, man. Beating the team that's in pursuit of a three-peat, it's just different than anything else you could possibly do.
I also, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like this would be the first time where Because I think if you get down to this point, we've seen this kind of floating like goalpost moving type of argument they've made for each team. What they said about Michigan, which we're going to get to in a second, was mind blowing to me. But like, it does seem like there's different criteria from step to step, where it's like, okay, this team, they did really well. They beat these teams. This team has the eye test and the resume. This team is just the eye test. If it gets to the eye test, I think that Bama gets in if they beat number 2 Georgia. Now Georgia, I think, has to be 12-0 for that to be like solidified, right? If it's 11-1, maybe it's a little bit different. But I do have a hard time thinking that, like, am I crazy for thinking that if they get there and Bama gets in over Texas, like Texas has a very close win over a 2-loss Big 12 team, or even a 3-loss Big 12 team, which could possibly still happen, then is anyone besides Texas completely up in arms over that, or am I crazy?
Oh, the anti-SEC crowd is up in arms. Yeah, no, you know that 100%. And look, I'm not saying that I blame them.
Yeah,
but I'm also saying that going 9-0 against the SEC schedule, showing how improved you are since week 2, running the table week 2, and having to take down the 2-time defending champs. And I realize you're not supposed to factor in other seasons into this, but it happens. You can't tell me that it doesn't happen. And the amount of respect that Alabama would have if that's what this ultimately turned into, man, look, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Texas has another loss ahead of them. I don't think Washington gets through totally unscathed. Washington has been playing with fire so much more than Florida State. Like, Washington's last 5 games, no margin of victory by more than 10 points in those last 5 games. After everybody's like, hey, is this like maybe,
they're the best team in America? Because I said it. I was all on board.
Yeah, like I had to talk people off I wrote like a column about why I hated the comparison to 2019 LSU. I'm like, I get it from a statistical profile, but like they were just trailing in the fourth quarter, or they were just trailing in the fourth quarter, and LSU 2019 never even had a chance, like with the other team with the ball, to take the lead in the fourth quarter. That wild stat to think about for an entire season. But anyways, this won't play out. This won't play out. It just won't. But it's about all we can talk about at this point when we've got a ranking that was pretty predictable.
I will say it does feel different, and it does feel different than in recent years, because I just feel like, I mean, look at last year. Bama was at 5 before they lost to LSU, right? Like it felt like there was like less in the way. There's more in the way this year because there's more undefeated teams, it feels like, and there's more like from like Power 5 conferences, because when you look at it, it's like the ACC has been out. Like outside of Clemson the past couple of years, the Pac-12 has been nothing. So now you have the fact that you have multiple Pac-12 teams in the top 6 is kind of surprising. All right, let's close out with this, and I want to hear your opinion on it, and then we'll get to our playoff predictions that we do each week, which maybe they haven't changed either. But Michigan, I'm not annoyed with the fact that actually, I am. I'm annoyed with the fact they're in the top 3 because I think that they could be a really good team. I think they are a really good team. I still don't think the cheating scandal is anything that should be factored in. I thought you made a really good point about that last week, so I backed off that. I think that's a really good point. What the committee is saying about Michigan versus the other teams, it feels so much of like, I don't know if they don't understand how biased it sounds, but like when they're explaining what they see with other teams, and it's talking about Ohio State's resume, Georgia just beat Mizzou. It is November 7th, Connor, and I understand who Michigan closes with, but they have the 111th ranked strength of schedule as of right now. They haven't played a ranked opponent. Their actual, this is actually bad for Georgia fans, but their opponent winning percentage is 41.3%, which is higher than Georgia's. Georgia's is under 40%, and it's the only team in the top 10 like that. But when they said on the broadcast, they've played a little bit different type of schedule. They haven't played a schedule, for one. And then they made the comment, it was like, we got to look at the way they won games. They got up big at 17 points in the first quarter against Purdue. Purdue's 2-7. And it was a home game after a week off. Like, am I crazy don't say in general, but am I crazy for thinking that they're being a little bit overvalued here?
You're not crazy for thinking that.
You're the high thing though, so you clearly think I am.
No. I don't I don't think you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy for saying that. I think it's the easiest resume to poke holes in. We've talked about this a lot. The Power 5 margin of victory that's sitting there still at what I think it's at like 37 points. I had this broken down to, yeah, I want to say it's like 37 points. It's still basically like twice as much as what anybody else is, which is just crazy to think about. I mean, think about that. Like their average margin against Power 5 competition is 37.7. Next closest is Oregon at 23.4. Like that is it's insane. So
if you look at historically on that too, and I wish you brought this up last week, and it's a really good point. But if you look at some of the numbers, I remember doing this in 2021 with Georgia and their margin of victory, because it was like hovering right around 30. If you look at going back to like 2005, the teams that have won the national championship that have been over that, it's like 2005 Texas, 2013 FSU, and then someone else. But like this is in line with that in terms of being as dominant, and that's very impressive company to be in.
Yeah, and if that continues after Penn State, and if it continues after Ohio State, all right, easy discussion. Yeah. Nobody's really debating it, and part because, okay, you've dominated Big Ten competition. You have shown that you can do that. That now this is the third consecutive year, maybe with a little bit of an assist from Connor, who spells his name correctly. But, this is still a situation where like the number 3 ranking is what it is at this point, and you can debate it all you want. But the thing that I'm going to be really interested to see, if Michigan wins this weekend at Penn State, a Penn State team who lives to serve Michigan and Ohio State and nothing else. They don't serve their own fans, that's for sure.
No.
If that happens and Michigan wins that game by 3 touchdowns, is Michigan number 1?
That is a very good question. I don't think so, because they've only played one team. But it is a road game, and I think the discussion should be held. But here's the thing that's going to hold it back, Connor. Now I don't know who Ohio State plays this weekend, but like I never thought I would say
Michigan State. Yeah.
Okay, so like that's whatever, but you still have a good enough resume so far. But Georgia playing Ole Miss,
right?
That's what's going to hold you back.
The interesting thing will be, and probably not, because the selection committee doesn't really have to change its stance on this until Michigan and Ohio State play each other. So they really don't have to do anything. And that's kind of what this all comes back to. But if they look at that and go, oh my God, like you dominated a top 10 team on the road, we're now respecting you. This backs up what we saw. And maybe, who knows, maybe Georgia's in a dogfight down to the wire against Ole Miss. And it shouldn't factor into whether or not they cover a spread. Right. But if it's like consecutive weeks in a row in which you're like, okay, this is, a really competitive game in the fourth quarter against, your 2 best teams that you faced, maybe then the selection committee is like, all right, well, Michigan continues to dominate. And they might, Georgia doesn't have that second victory either, but at least now Michigan has that one. And then Michigan, what it did with the mutual opponent, Penn State, and at Penn State compared to Ohio State at home. Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. I would say probably not. Yeah,
I would be shocked, but also the way the committee has talked about Michigan, maybe I wouldn't be that shocked. All right, we tried to do this under 15 minutes. This is another fun episode. I appreciate you joining me. Give me your top 4 prediction going to the end of the year before we close out.
I think I'm backing off of Ohio State. The more I think about it, God, I think I'm backing off. Gosh, it's bad. I feel so basic doing that. I don't like that. You know what? No, I'm going to stick to my guns. Let's just dig my heels in even deeper. Let's stick with the original national championship prediction. So Ohio State and Georgia will both make the college football playoff, and Florida State will get in because Florida State has the easiest path.
Right.
I'm sticking with that. And then my fourth team. I'm going to go with 12-1 Washington, who loses to a 2-loss Oregon team in the Pac-12 championship and does what TCU did last year. I know I'm saying the same exact thing that I said last week. Not that much has changed.
That's fair. I will take at 4. Give me Ole Miss. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that. No. So I think I'll take Ohio State. I will take Florida State. I still think that Oregon wins out, and I think they get in. Am I messing up again? And then I'll take Texas because I think Texas wins out. But I'd left the team out. I think that they're beatable. I think that team is beatable.
Wait, who'd you leave out?
Georgia.
So you think the SEC misses out then in this scenario?
In this scenario, this week, this is how I'm feeling. I just thought about it right now in my head. So I just think that Bama is able to beat Georgia. And it would also be such weird poetic justice in a very weird season, Connor, that like the Pac-12 is like last year. Stop looking at me like that. I know I'm wrong. Okay.
I'm about to give you the stat that's going to hurt your feelings, but go ahead.
Give me was it about Bama or is it?
No, it's just about the SEC as a whole. And like, look, I went to a Big Ten school.
Yeah.
I think I have like decent perspective on this. I've seen the light. We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
17 consecutive years in which the SEC champion has had a chance to play for a national championship. The SEC champion has played in a national championship
Right.
16 of the last 17 years. The only year that it didn't happen, Marler, was when?
2014.
Yeah.
When Bama lost to State. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's what I'll promise to do this next week. Next week, I'll actually give my ranking thought. I don't sound like an idiot. All right, dude. Tell everyone about the podcast. Who do you guys have coming on tomorrow?
We got your best buddy Matt Hayes coming on. We will break down a lot of coaching stuff. It's a great time of year to talk coaching stuff. I was nerding out big time today. I was looking up candidates for all sorts of jobs, coordinator jobs, head coaching jobs. Like one of the things that I found myself very much addicted to right around like early to mid-November. So we're gonna be doing a lot of that, and then I'm sure we'll get into his prediction of LSU winning a national championship and me telling him he was wrong in the preseason, and me just doing a victory lap.
Well, if there's any other stuff you need help with the victory lap on with Matt Hayes, just let me know and I'll be happy to join. All right, buddy. We'll do it again next week. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.
All right.